back to Pro Life Without Borders with Sarah and Mikayla. So we have some interesting news this week. We have kind of sort of tried to launch our merch line.
We're working on it.
We're working on launching our merch line.
I don't love putting a timestamp on that. So we're and by we I mean Mikayla is actively working on the situation.
So it all came about because we were watching this very pro-choice. So I creep around on some pro-choice platforms, webinars, whatever, because I want to see what they're saying about us, and I want to see how they're planning on like combating us because whatever. And so I use my personal email because I don't want to use my work email. Right. But at the same time, like if someone asked, like if there was a checkbox that says like, "Are you pro-choice?" Like I wouldn't click it. Like I'm not lying to anyone. We're not signing up. Yeah. Like I'm using my real name. I mean, there's 800 Sarah Bowens out there, so it's not right. Like it's that.
We're not being nefarious.
Yeah, we're not being sneaky. I just want to know what's going on and whatever. So we're sitting in on this, and we realize that some of the things that the pro-choice community says about us is actually really complimentary.
It is.
It is.
So like I was just honored to be there.
Yes, it was beautiful. So they have their activist toolkit, and one of the things it says in their toolkit is that it's very hard to be a pro-choice activist because pro-lifers are...
We are doggedly focused.
Doggedly focused.
Doggedly focused.
And dang straight.
Yeah. So it just means like unrelenting.
We don't give up.
Yeah.
We don't back down.
Yes.
We just plug it
doggedly
away.
Focused.
So because our podcast colors are hot pink and black, which is a nod to one of our like national abortion providers, if you haven't figured that out. We have a bulldog with doggedly focused on it, and then Pro Life Without Borders kind of underneath the bulldog. So we are working on making that available for you, and you'll be able to purchase it as like a t-shirt, crew neck, hat, whatever. And then we're also finding some other phrases and things. So if you have found a phrase that our beautiful opponents have shared about us that is actually kind of complimentary, we would be happy to put it on a t-shirt. So you're welcome to share that. Send that to us at podcast@promiseoflifenetwork.org. And if it's worthy,
we'll put
it on we'll put it on a t-shirt. And our hope is we're very new to merchandising. We're also very new to podcasting. We're new to almost everything.
Yeah, we don't know what we're doing. It's fine.
My hope is that we can share like screenshots of where we got the quote, so you'll know we're not just making it up.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, unfortunately, these are real life things that happen to us.
But I will say that there's this general sort of mystification that surrounds pro-lifers. Like the other side, the pro-choicers, the pro-abortion, the pro-abortees, they don't get us.
It is interesting to hear them talk about us. Because obviously, I know us, and so like the way they talk about us is so flattering because they're like, you would just think that we were like some like major like almost militia of like this underground resistance, and it's just like I literally was cranking that Soldier Boy in my office this morning, like
we're not that, we don't have any money.
Yeah,
they refer to like big pro-life, and when they say that, they mean pregnancy centers. But like we're not big, we're little pro-life.
Right. And I was just like, my curtains literally have a tear in them because I bought them for $1 at the auction.
Right.
Like I'm not in some big mega pro-life office. Like so it's just entertaining to me to hear them talk.
They definitely think we're way better funded than we are.
Right. Well, apparently I don't know if you've heard the news, I'm sure you have, but we have billions of dollars.
Right. So if you add up every single pregnancy center in the entire United States and multiply it a few times, you may get to $1 billion. But like they're also not realizing that that's a lot of pregnancy centers doing a lot of things for a lot of people.
Right. So it's not like salaries.
Right. We're not just sitting around like rolling in our billions.
Well, that's what
that's
what they're used to. So why wouldn't they assume that we would be acting
and I think
same?
That's the thing. So if you want someone to work for a pro-choice organization, unless it's a very new one and a very radical one, so someone that's had a personal experience, they're just super mad about it or whatever, you have to pay through the nose.
Yeah.
Like one of our nurses actually got an ad, and she's like 99% sure it was for Planned Parenthood, and they were going to pay her like over $180 an hour to do like telemed for abortion care.
Right.
Because they can't get anyone to do it.
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to do it. Like nurses do not go to nursing school and think, oh, I can't wait to be an abortionist.
Right.
So, and I know Abby Johnson talks about this a lot, and she used to run a clinic. they have to really pay through the nose to keep people because it's not exciting. It's not, you don't get passionate about women having abortions.
No, I can't fathom what it must be like on your mental health to have a job like that. Like, I just
people
can't
leave crying and bleeding and sad.
Yeah.
And depressed. Yeah. Like, I just can't, because that's what they see. Like, every person that I've ever talked to or every story that I've ever read of like the recovery room in an abortion clinic, it is the saddest place you could ever expect to be.
Well, and having, you know, essentially 2 patients when they walk in and 1 patient walk out is really devastating.
Right.
Regardless of how you think you feel about it.
Yeah.
It's devastating.
Even like the activist stuff, like where you could do the March for Life and, you know, 500,000 people show up and almost none of those people are getting paid. So the people who are getting paid are potentially like some of the speakers, or if you're like repping your company or your pro-life group there. I mean,
you might get, probably not great.
Right. You're not getting a ton of money, but you might be getting something. And you have like a pro-choice march and nobody shows up.
Yeah.
It's just not, it's hard to get passionate about killing babies, I guess.
Right.
And so they really can't comprehend why there's this large group of mostly women who are working for very little, doing very long hours, and they just don't give up.
Yeah.
They really can't wrap their head around
it. Doggedly focused.
Yeah. So you can get your own Doggedly Focused t-shirt whenever we figure out how to run a merch
I really am working on it. There's just been a lot going on.
Well, I also almost gave you a heart attack because we had a donor call me on my phone, and he's like, I'm sending you a check and I want you to use it to get this merch line started. I love this picture, which is wild to me that he even saw it because he's not on Facebook.
Yeah, like how he's not a social media person. And I'm like, I'm not gonna lie, it's not like this over the top design. Like it's rather
plain.
I was like, it's rather like someone who doesn't have a graphic design degree made it.
I love it though. Anyway, he loved it. And he was like, I'm sending you this money. And if you need it to start this merch line, I want you to use it to start the merch line. And I was so excited. I went like busting into Mikayla's office and almost gave her a heart attack.
Right. Because I wasn't really paying attention. So I just hear like, duh, 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 and then my door literally just like blows open.
Yeah. And it's me.
And I'm like
this, leaping into your office.
It's happening. Like, here we go. I've sat through so many trainings for this very moment. I'm like, I was ready to be ready. There was no need.
There was no need.
It was absolutely not necessary.
That was the pitter patter of joyous executive director feet.
Yes. So merch line.
Yeah.
Stay tuned. The works. I'm trying my best. That's all I can say.
Just like with the podcast, we're doing what we can.
I'm really hanging in there.
So last week we were going to talk about how if state federal funding cuts affects Promise of Life Network. So the short answer is it does not.
Right.
So Promise of Life Network, to the best of my knowledge, has never accepted state or federal funding.
And you would have fairly good knowledge.
I would have
because
fairly
you
good
have
knowledge.
Been here for a long time.
Well, and the person who's been here longer than me is Tom Melling.
And there's no way.
There's no way.
There's no way.
There is no way.
We're good. So, we're fine.
Tom Melling is our board president.
Right.
And we joke that he's been the board president since Noah stepped off the ark, which is not entirely inaccurate. Amazing guy, phenomenal man of God, core of steel to him. Love him. He is not going to take. He's not going to take Uncle Sam's money.
Right. So
and he's not going to let us do it.
Yeah.
Even if we want.
And that's intentional. Because obviously if we took federal or state funding, suddenly the government has say in how we operate things. That's just how funding works. And our government and our state should not be telling us how to run things.
Right. So the biggest
historically not very solid.
It's historically not a great idea. So the biggest way that it impacts pregnancy, and some pregnancy centers do take state funding.
Yes,
and I'm not trying to run them down.
Yeah, I was about to say we are solely talking about Promise of Life Network in the context in which we exist.
Yes,
everything before us
in our reality, in the reality of the sphere
in which everything has come before. I can't remember the quote exactly because it was so far out there, and that's saying a lot because I literally have a degree in rhetoric, and so it's pretty far out there. But like, we exist in the context of everything that's come before us.
You can just put it on the screen.
I will. I'm just going to insert the clip.
There you go. So we have never accepted state funding. There are pregnancy centers who have accepted state funding. It does not make them a bad pregnancy center. Mm-hmm. So if you're sitting there thinking, oh no, my pregnancy center accepts state funding or has accepted state funding, like they have sold out, I must quit giving to them. Please don't.
Yeah, not the case at all.
If you are concerned about it, talk to the director, ask how it impacts them.
Some states are really great. It's just Pennsylvania.
Well, so all of it has restrictions.
Yes.
And when you're a nonprofit that accepts any kind of giving, some of that giving is going to come with restrictions. And so a really clear example is like we are working to fund a retaining wall in Newcastle.
Yes.
So exciting.
Yeah, it's just been the highlight of our year.
Yes, essentially there's this old railroad tie. Like everyone in the 90s was putting railroad ties everywhere. I don't really understand the appeal. But everybody was doing it. And so now we have this old railroad tie kind of vibe retaining wall, and it's starting to fall over. It's not great.
It is a problem.
It's a problem. And so we are seeking funding for this wall.
Yes.
And so we are approaching funders and saying, hey, we have this quote. This is how much it's going to cost to get it fixed. Will you fund this fix? And so let's say 3 people come to us and they say, we're going to give you this much money for the wall. And then we go and it doesn't cost us that much. We can't just take that money without talking to them and use it for pregnancy tests.
Right, because it's tied directly to the retaining wall.
So we would have to, so what I would do, so let's say like Mikayla is a very wealthy donor and she gives us $2,000 more than we needed for this wall. And then I'm like, okay, well, the wall is done, but we really wanted to also put gravel in the parking lot. I would call her on the phone and say, hey, Mikayla, I still have $2,000 left over. Would you be okay if we used it for gravel in the parking lot? And then she could say yes or no. And so restricted funding happens pretty frequently. We have grants that are tied to a geography. So like the foundation only funds projects in one county.
Right.
So then we have to make sure that that money stays in that county. And then we have other grants that are funded to program. So it only funds the international division.
Right.
And so our accountants look over that really carefully and make sure that we're spending responsibly and that restricted money stays where it's supposed to stay. Yeah. And so state funding is kind of like that, but it has some extra dimensions to it. One of them is that, at least in Pennsylvania, you can't use state money to share the gospel.
Right.
So if and I may explain this poorly and I apologize because we don't accept it, but my understanding is that like if I'm working with a client and I'm going to bill that to the state. So the state has said, we have an interest in women having options or women having parenting education or women having whatever. But you can't use it to share the gospel because we're not, the state is obviously not a Christian organization. Then someone that gospel sharing can't occur during like billable hours, if that makes sense. Right. And that's really where the biggest hurdle is for pregnancy centers. Right. Now there are some pregnancy centers who have historically taken funding for their abstinence programs because we can't share the gospel in public schools. Right. Because there's their own set of rules that prevent that. And there's pregnancy centers that have very successfully accepted state funding for their abstinence program. And again, not us, but other pregnancy centers have. And then the biggest issue there is when that funding disappears, because eventually it will.
Your program can't move forward unless it has funding elsewhere. Right. And why would people fund a program that's funded?
Yes. And so that can be a problem. It's really a very ticklish subject.
Right.
So we as an organization have chosen to just say, no, we're not taking state funding. Other centers take it in very limited contexts, in very limited ways. No pregnancy center is solely funded by the state.
No.
Not a single one. They're just not. We don't. And when you hear the big numbers, so sometimes you'll hear like pro-choice activists or news media, oh, pregnancy centers got all this money. Well, you have to realize, first of all, it's not all going just to pregnancy centers. Right. It's also going to other programs that help parents. So like Catholic Charities and People in Need are 2 other programs. I think Nurse Family Partnership gets some of it. So there's other secular, because even Catholic Charities is pretty secular, organizations that accept the funding and then provide diapers, wipes, baby clothes, parenting classes. Not the same as ours, but there are some similarities to women in the community. And so not all of that money in Pennsylvania, it's called Real Alternatives. Not all of that money is going directly to like what you and I would say is a pregnancy center. Right. So the bigger question, this is going to be like that boring one that I made you do.
I'm just sitting here like, I'm trying really hard. I'm like, yeah.
Are you going to fall asleep?
No, I'm not going to fall asleep. Because it is interesting. Because I think people just have like a misconception of how funding works. And so they're like, oh, like if you take state funding, you've sold out. And you're like, that's not true.
It's a little bit too extreme to say that.
And then on the flip side, people are just concerned. And I know that the questions that I've been getting are from concerned donors who are like, suddenly is your organization going to fall apart? And I'm like, no, actually, all of the budget cuts that have been happening don't directly impact us, I would say, financially, in the sense of like suddenly money we relied on is gone.
Nope.
In fact, most of the time it's making my job a little bit easier because now we're not sending abortion overseas. And so I don't have to worry about that.
That's nice. But the state budget cuts or state and federal budget cuts do impact us in a less direct way. Yes. So they impact us in two ways. The first is that more organizations are going to be going and seeking funding from the same sources that we seek funding from. Mm-hmm. And if they've just lost all of their funding, I'm using the word funding a lot. I feel like it's confusing. So there are state grants and then there's private grants, and we do get private grants. So grants that it's a family foundation, that's now run by a board or it used to be like a lot of times it used to be an orphanage. And then when orphanages kind of went out of style, they now have like just their assets and they use those to help children in other ways, which obviously we help children, so we get money from them. And so some of the organizations who did accept state funding and are now maybe not getting it or not getting as much are going to be going after like the same grants that we are. Mm-hmm. And obviously, there's only so much money to go around. And so there's a chance, and this is up to the funder. I would never run a funder down for choosing someone over us. They may choose to fund a different organization other than us, and then that would impact us. Right. The other way that it impacted us, and this is actually less a federal issue and more a state issue, is when the Real Alternatives funding was cut a few years ago. The Catholic charities in our area and the people in needs in our area either vastly reduced their services or went under completely. So we took on, there were greater needs in our community because other organizations no longer could operate the way that they were used to. And so that is when we did see a jump in jump. Especially in our parenting program, like the material resources that we provide after that funding was cut. So even though we didn't receive Real Alternatives funding, organizations that was helping our community disappeared. Yes. Or a lot of drastically reduced services. And a lot of those families that were getting help from them are now coming to us. And we're still operating on the same amount of money. So our New Beginnings clients from 2023, no, I'm going to get my years wrong again. You know how bad I am with this. From 2022 to 2023, our numbers jumped 30%. Right. And we had already taken on way more new clients from the pandemic. Yes. So our numbers went sky high in 2020. Yeah. Came down a tiny bit in 21. Mm-hmm. Kind of stayed the same in 22. Went 30% up again in 23. And then from 23 to 24 went up 40%. Right. And we really have not increased the amount of money we spend on that program. Like, we are beyond maxed out. Oh yeah. I'm not actually sure how our existing staff are serving as many families. I really don't fully understand it. And I'm just like, well, we're just thank you, Lord. Rocketing along. There's 4 part-time staff. I'm not sure. I think it's basically 2 full-time equivalent. It might be a hair above 2 full-time. Yeah. Because I think one of them works a little bit more than 20 hours a week. Yeah. And they're serving 400 families a year or something crazy like that. Yeah. It's wild. Insane. So almost like 3,000 appointments a year. And it's a 4 part-time staff members. Yeah. I feel so bad for them. They're amazing. They love it. Oh yeah. No, like they're living their best lives. Yeah. And they're doing such a great job. Yeah. I mean, they truly, like, they're fantastic. They're rock stars. But I do, like, sometimes I just sit back, like, in staff meetings and I'm like, they're like sharing their numbers and stuff. And we're like, that's a really high number. I'm like, I don't know. And I've even gone into, like some of their offices, just the way we have offices set up. I usually don't leave my little administrative office here in Slippery Rock. So, but I have been over there to like see if there's something I can do. And it's kind of like, no, this is just how it is. Yeah. And like, it's beautiful though. It's great. All the kids running around and like diapers and wipes going in and out. Oh yeah. It's so chaotic. Like I was sitting there like working and like children are running around everywhere. Clients are coming and going. And like, have you seen this box of diapers? And I'm like, I don't know what's going on. So and the other thing is that in 2020, and I would say we've had this conversation before, but it was very critical in 2020. We committed that if a family came to us in need, we would help them. Yeah. And if we ran out of resources, then we would be out. And we didn't feel like it was right. And I still say this, we do not feel that it's right to say, well, we have things, but we have to save them for our current clients. You can't have them. So our philosophy, and it was like this before 2020, but I don't think we had to have the conversation.
Yeah.
So our philosophy in 2020 became very firmly, if God brings someone in need to us, we help them.
Yeah.
And then we help the next person and the next person and the next person. And if someday we run out of things, then we run out. And every single time we think, oh no, we have run out. Literally trucks will show up in our parking lot.
The 18-wheeler with like all
the diapers. Yeah. And it's not like we definitely put the need out to donors occasionally.
Yeah, sure.
But like a lot of the time we haven't even had a chance to put the need out. And we like look at each other and we go, we are out of diapers. And then we look out the window and a truck pulls in. Like, I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
That's how fast it happens.
Yeah.
The one time in 2020, we were like pretty much out of like 3 or 4 sizes.
Yeah,
so we had a lot of really small ones and we had a lot of really big ones, and we didn't have any little medium-sized ones.
Yeah, so like little preemie babies and chonky babies were set.
And no one else was.
And all of like the regular sized babies were just kind of
if you've been running too much and your little thighs are skinny, we can't help you. And so this guy pulls up in like a station wagon.
Yeah.
And said that one of our board members at the time had put out the need on Facebook. And he's like, if he says there's a need, there's a need. And he just opens the doors and like the back and just diapers are, it's just he like went to Walmart and bought out their diaper section.
Well, and that's the thing too, is that a lot of like those types of things were happening during a time, especially during like 2020, 2021, where supplies were limited everywhere.
Right.
So it wasn't like, oh, Promise of Life is out of formula. Everyone was out of formula. Right. Walmart was out of formula. Target was out. Like everybody was out.
But man, if a client needed a type of formula, we had it.
Were gonna,
we had
like it was crazy.
It was it was like miracle after miracle after miracle, to the point where I was at a church. This is the shadiest pro-life thing I've ever done.
Okay.
So
I'm prepared to edit. We're gonna have to like change your voice.
And we were talking. It's gonna be like blurred. I'll be like in a black hood with my voice filter. No. So I was at a church and I was explaining like how we help women with formula and how big of a need it is and blah, 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 blah. And then, I don't know, the Holy Spirit was like, talk about foster kids. And so then I jumped right into, and we also help with foster families because we do. So if someone receives especially unexpected custody of a foster child, just come get stuff.
Yeah.
Like, just come get it. Like, because you know how it is. It's March and it's cold because you live in Western Pennsylvania, and the only stuff at Walmart is like swimsuits.
Yeah.
Because that's just the way stores are. Well, that's a real problem when you get a baby in March and they have no clothes.
Yeah, you haven't been planning for months.
Right. Yeah. It's not like if you were pregnant and you were like, oh, I have 9 months to figure this out. Like, no, like you're all of a sudden being told, oh, we're bringing a 2-year-old and he's only got the clothes on his back. And so we've had families come in and get like bags of clothes or specific items that they need for their foster baby, and that's great. And so I specifically mentioned helping foster families, and this mom comes up to me and she goes, my friend is a foster parent and she needs this very, very specific type of formula, a formula I really did not recognize.
Okay. Yeah.
And she can't change it because they're a foster child and it's what they have to have.
Okay,
like, it's not like your own child where you could be like, oh, I think you'll be okay.
Or,
like, let's try this other brand or whatever. Like, this is not your child. Like, you have to give them what they're supposed to have.
Right.
And I was like, well, I just picked up a bunch of donations. Let's go see if there's any in my car. So we're like in the parking lot of the church, and I'm like digging through my car, and I'm like, oh, here's some formula. And it was the exact kind.
Nice.
Like the brand, the type that this mom needed.
Yeah.
So I say that I was dealing formula out of the trunk of my car in a church parking lot.
There's the sketchy part. I was like, where does this get sketchy?
Like,
there it is.
Sketchy.
There it is.
Yeah. So I'm like in the parking lot of a church, like handing formula
You made it sketchy. It didn't have to be sketchy.
Yeah, but also like I don't have any real sketch in my life, so I have to take it where I can get it.
Okay.
So
no comment.
Yeah. So we committed to helping anyone, and we've continued with that commitment, and that's part of why our clients have really blown up. Like we just had, the numbers have gone crazy, and we're going to continue to stay with that, as long as God provides. And so far he has. So we're trusting that.
Right.
So those are some very indirect ways that we're affected by the funding cuts. So more competition for private funding, and more clients as other organizations are no longer able to serve.
Wow.
Now, the thing is, we would love for that to happen in our medical facilities. So we provide pregnancy testing and ultrasounds, obviously. Early identification of pregnancy, making sure that like everything's okay, telling women how far along they are, talking about their options. We also provide STD testing and treatment for 4 different STDs. So HIV, syphilis, chlamydia, and gonorrhea. Gonorrhea is on the floor.
Gonorrhea is on the floor.
Yeah.
But this is chlamydia.
There's chlamydia. Isn't he cute? He's not really cute in real life. You don't want him. And we provide well women exams. And we do that for free. to anyone in need. And we would love to have, if there were organizations in our community that maybe don't have the same values as we do, I'm going to leave that there, who lost their state and federal funding, we would be happy to pick that gap up.
Yes.
100%.
Well, and that's the thing is, I've seen a lot, you know, in the past couple of weeks about all this funding that's being cut. And I even had someone ask on my personal social media, I had shared something about, it was a meme. I'm not going to lie, I shared a meme. Because that's how millennials like convey.
That's how we communicate.
Yeah, convey like political thought in 2025. So I shared a meme that was like, it's not great, but it's not honest. Like, you know that?
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
It's not
honest, but it's much.
Yeah. And so I shared that, and so someone was like, well, what about, and they brought up like women's health and like, what about women's wellness exams? And
I was, a funny story.
Well, I was really going through it whenever this came up. Like, I'm still continuing to go through it, but like I was really going through it. And so someone else took up the cause, and I really appreciate her for stepping in. And she messaged me and was like, "Can I?" And I was like, "You go for it, girl, because I can't handle it." And she was like, "There are organizations like the one Mikayla works for that can fill in the gap. Like, that help is out there."
Yeah.
The problem that we run into, and we were just having this conversation over the weekend. Sarah and I talk about work when we go to parties. It's really fun.
It's true. We have a real problem.
Well,
but I feel like it was like.
But also, I feel like they kind of wanted us there to talk about work in a way.
It was a tangentially work party because the person who the parties honor, in whom
the person throwing the party volunteers for us.
No, that's not true. The party was thrown for volunteers.
Her husband threw the party.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was also like funeral thing. There was just a lot going on at this party.
Yeah.
And amidst all, it was a fantastic party. The pavlova.
Pavlova. I've never had pavlova. I had so much pavlova.
I love pavlova.
And then I brought the pavlova home because they gave me more pavlova, and my kids ate it.
Yeah, that's the risk you run when you have children.
I struggled a little.
Anyway, so we were talking with someone at this party about a specific struggle that we have, and it's related to our medical services and advertising.
Yep.
And so, all of these people are screaming about all of, these organizations losing their funding and who's going to do the women's exams. We are. Mm-hmm. But they don't know that because we've been fighting these mega organizations for years.
Mega abortion companies. Tens of thousands of dollars monthly into our specific area for advertising.
Right. And so we are trying to compete with that, and we just can't. I mean,
we can't do it.
Their advertising budget is insane.
Obscene. Like, I'm going to say the word obscene.
Obscene. Like, I wouldn't even be surprised if our entire organization could run off of their advertising budget.
Oh, 100%.
Like when
I look at and realize none of their stuff is being done by volunteers.
No, yeah, they've got paid staff.
None of their stuff is being done by wonderful businesses that give them a cut rate. Mm-hmm. Like, they're paying market value.
For sure.
I'm guaranteeing it right here. And their stuff is very smooth, and it's everything like matches, and they have all their PR and everything. I mean, I know that stuff.
Yeah, their campaigns and everything are organized, and so
like it's not their executive director sitting in the office thinking, "Well, that sounds okay," which is literally what we're doing.
Yeah, like we're trying our best, and that's what we're up against. And so there are people who can fill these gaps. We've always been here, but that's whatever. Mm-hmm. But we don't honestly,
if we didn't have to compete, we would have so much more money to put into offering services.
Right. But like we're having to compete, and it's a competition worth having.
Yes.
And that was the conversation, that we were having over the weekend, is that we have to do this.
Right.
And in some cases, this was referring specifically to abortion pill providers, because we continue to operate the only website geared towards the abortion pill from a pro-life perspective.
Mm-hmm. I would say geared towards the home abortion.
The home abortion, yeah. Right. The home abortion issue. It's just us. And we thought that it would change and that someone else with more money would pick it up, and no one has. And so we're just out here.
Right. Doing our best.
And doing our best with a budget that can't compete.
Right. And the thing is, we're competing with Planned Parenthood and Marie Stopes and Plan C and Doctors Without Borders and the World Health Organization and Aid Access. And these are all really well funded by our dollars, right? We talked about that in the last episode, by tax dollars from us and other countries. And we just aren't. And so it's really, but we can't let women. So one of my life verses is Proverbs 24:11. Save those who are stumbling towards the slaughter. Well, the advertising that those companies pay tons of thousands of dollars in our area for, is pushing women towards the slaughter. And we have to speak out. We have to be able to at least put ourselves out there so that they have two options when they Google.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have a choice. We can't just say, oh, we're not going to pay for advertising.
No.
Because otherwise we're going to lose women who think they're going to end up thinking they have no choice other than to go to an abortion
And this
facility.
isn't a matter of trying to be trendy or like wanting things that we can't afford. Like, this is a necessity. And I think that's the conversation, to have with donors, is like, advertising is not, it can't be the first thing that you cut. Right. Like, it's not like this, well, it would be nice if. It has to happen.
It has to happen. And in our day and age, we do get a lot of word of mouth referrals for like our parenting program.
Yeah.
But when women are facing an unplanned pregnancy, they're going to Google.
Right.
They're not going to go talk to their best friend or their mom or their aunt or their cousin most of the time.
No, because we've put privacy as like the top issue. And so people don't want people to know. People don't want to talk about it. They've been marketed to by these mega companies that you don't have to talk about it. Right. You don't even have to tell your doctor you had an abortion. Yeah. So why would they tell grandma down the street so that she can refer us to Promise of Life?
Right.
And so word of mouth is great. It happens, but advertising is where
we have to advertise. If we want to save women from stumbling to the slaughter, we have to be sort of at the well where they are, and we get there through advertising.
Yeah.
There's a lot of metaphors.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
Keep up. So that's a thing. And so if some of these pro-abortion organizations see their funding cut and they can put less money into advertising, that will help us in the long run.
Right. But like, the point being is that, you just hear all of this talk about, like, well, what about? Yeah. We do it. We have well women's exams. And it's just hard to get the word out because of advertising budgets.
Yes. So the one thing that we do in partnership with the state, it's very minimal. So when we started STD testing, it's tough. So we have the nurses, we have the staff, we have all of that. But what we really don't have is a testing facility. So like, we don't have like a teeny tiny lab inside of our office where we can do the test and find out if someone has an STD. And so we do partner with the Pennsylvania Department of Health. So the Pennsylvania Department of Health has a compelling interest in testing and treating STDs because it's a public health crisis.
Yeah, I was like, I think most of society could have a vested interest in this. Right.
Yes. And so the threshold to partner with the state, and I'll explain what that partnership looks like, is a 5% positive rate.
Yeah.
And our positive rate for last year, I think, was 17%.
Yeah, it was 17 or 18. It was something way beyond what it needed to be.
Way beyond 5%. So it's definitely a need in our community. So what the state does is they provide the testing supplies. So I don't even think we get gloves and stuff. We just get cups.
Yeah, it's literally just like the
cups,
materials.
And we get like the little vials with the stabilizing liquid in it that we put the specimen in. And then they give us like the box to ship it in. And then we ship it to their lab. They run the test and give us the results.
Yeah.
And then the nicest thing about that, honestly, is not just the supplies and the tests, because supplies are not expensive.
You could buy cups. Yeah.
Yeah, the tests are expensive. Like, the actual testing process is a little bit more expensive, but the supplies aren't bad. But the nice thing is then if we have a client who's positive and we can't get in touch with them, the Department of Health takes over. So there's certain STDs where if someone is positive, you have to get a hold of them. Like, you have to let them know. And if they're not answering their phone, or like they aren't interested in us reaching out to them, or they're just not getting back to us, then we're able to kind of like say, go to basically, because we partner with the state and they have the results, and our clients know this, like, it's all disclosed up front. then the state would take over and say, okay, this is like a high risk STD. So we're going to take over trying to contact this person. And then we don't have to put a ton of resources into trying to connect with them.
Yeah.
Which is really nice. And it almost, honestly, it really doesn't happen. But
most people are vested in knowing their
status. Want to know, and they want to get taken care of. So the state provides like very minimally testing supplies, the actual test itself, and then some software that we use to like look it up and see what the result was. It's all like confidential, whatever. So that's like it. And when we went into that partnership, like we were very clear about who we are and how we operate. So like we talk about abstinence, we talk about healthy relationships, we talk about boundaries. There's certain things we don't provide, and we share the gospel. And we kind of threw it out there, and we were like, okay, if you're okay with this, we can move forward. And if you're not, then we can't. Yeah. So, very limited, but yeah, so that's kind of it. So if you have been concerned about your local pregnancy center, definitely contact them. Some pregnancy centers have been impacted by state budget cuts or federal budget cuts. Directly. Actually, I would say probably none have been affected by federal.
No, like I can't.
I don't think any
imagine. Like I have no idea what kind of system would be in place for that to happen. So
yeah, I mean, my guess would be that they haven't been impacted by federal cuts. If they're impacted by state cuts, if you're concerned about your pregnancy center potentially taking state funding, I would say have a conversation. I actually get really excited when people want to talk about the budget.
Yeah, we know.
I'm sorry. I get really excited, and I'm sure other directors feel the same way. Like if you want to come in and go through the budget with me, like please do. Bring coffee. We're gonna party. We're gonna have a budget party.
Yeah. So to sum all of this up, no, we are not directly impacted by any sort of state or federal budget cuts that you hear happening in the news. Yes, we are indirectly affected in that the need has just never been greater. We take on clients from other organizations that were impacted by budget cuts. Obviously, the economy is struggling just from the years of hardship. Yeah. And so in that respect, yes, we're impacted in that our clients have great needs because the economy has been tough. Yes. And all of the birds are dying, and so we don't have any eggs and whatever else is going on. And so talk to your local pregnancy center about the needs that they have. And I know a big one for us is that we just can't compete with the advertising budgets of these big pro-choice conglomerates.
Very well-funded pro-choice conglomerates.
Very well-funded.
So the need is great.
The resources are
few, but the Lord is faithful, and He always comes through. Yeah. Always.
And we will continue to serve people who need our services until we literally can't anymore. And then
we might actually just keep going.
And then I was like, honestly, I think we'll just find a way and we would just check on.
So if you want to be part of what God is doing in an organ, and so it's not involuntary philanthropy, it's not your tax dollars going to a center. If you want to be part of just voluntarily giving to an organization that shares your beliefs and shares your interests and shares your passion for the unborn and their families, you can donate to promiseoflifenetwork.org/donate. If we are your local pregnancy center, if we are not your local pregnancy center and you would like to donate to us in addition to supporting your local pregnancy center, we would absolutely welcome that. But if you are not currently supporting your pregnancy center, please check them out first.
Yes.
So look for the one in your backyard, in your community, in your region, and see, what's the deal.
Yeah. And if you're having a hard time locating, feel free to reach out, podcast@promiseoflifenetwork.org, and I'd be happy to help you find your local pregnancy center. We've got directories and connections, and the pregnancy help movement is not that big. We all know each other. Yeah, I was most of us know each other or know of each other, so we can help you figure that out. And if you don't have a local pregnancy center, start one. We could give you resources on that too.
Get her done.
We really love pregnancy centers.
We really do. And so if you're thinking I don't know that organization, I don't know anything about them, get to know them. Call them, ask to do a tour, ask about their finances, ask about their need, ask about their mission. Yeah. Oh, we love
coffee. Take them out for coffee though. And I do mean take them out for coffee. Pay for the coffee, not pay for the coffee.
Like the whole staff. Can you imagine?
That would be
all of us in a giant.
First of all, that would
together?
Be great because I have to pay for my own coffee. If I want coffee It's coming out of Mikayla's coffee budget.
So there's a line item in our budget that says director meetings.
Yeah, it was like $4.
It was $4 or something. And our treasurer was like, why does this tiny little dollar amount have its own line? And I was like, oh, that was like a coffee that I got with a donor.
Yeah.
And he was like, you went like to get one coffee. And I was like, no, I normally like either the donor pays for it, which happens sometimes, or just pay for it. Like, cause I don't need the center to cover my
coffee.
So
if you're taking a pregnancy center employee or like their executive director out for coffee, I just recommend paying for it.
We do like that.
Like, just make it easier for their accountant. Because otherwise they'll just pay for it out of their own pocket to avoid the accounting.
Because it feels wrong.
It just feels wrong. So just pay for it. Spare us the moral question and just pay for our coffee.
Yes. So the Jesus moment for me is where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And I think that we talk a lot about that from a secular perspective of, is your money all in your boat, or is your money all in your yacht, or which is the same thing, or is your money all in
just really fancy
boats? We
don't obviously.
We obviously
aren't in that tax bracket.
Either a boat or a yacht. I do have a little fish that if you wind it up, it swims around the bathtub.
There you go.
That's about it. Or is your money in your car or your house or whatever? But I think too, we also have to realize that there's a certain amount of corruption that comes from where our tax dollars go.
Yeah.
So where is our money as a country? And is that where our heart is? And if it's not, then why are we letting it continue?
Yeah.
So ask the Lord where your heart should be, and then put your money there.
Yep.
And maybe your heart is here.
Yeah, that would be very convenient.
That would be great.
But any local pregnancy center is where your heart should be.
And your dollar will go so far.
Yes.
Because we are so careful. All of us are. Every single pregnancy center. I've never met a single pregnancy center that wasn't very careful with donor dollars.
The financial stewardship is...
It's very important.
I mean, we're called to it. It's like we're commanded to be good stewards of our resources. Like that was not just like a private thing. That was just like thrown out there.
And I think I'm definitely more careful I'm careful with my own resources. Like, you know that.
Yeah.
But I'm even more careful with center resources because I know that money was like entrusted to us.
Yeah. It's entrusted to us by others for a cause.
Mm-hmm. And we want to make sure that we honor that trust and that we fulfill the mission that they are asking us to fulfill.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. That's our exciting, just amazing state fund. Is state funding affecting your pregnancy center? Short answer, probably not.
Yeah.
But we'd love some of non-state funded money. So you can donate at promiseoflifenetwork.org/donate. Find your local pregnancy center. And if there isn't one,
start one, baby.
Start one.
We should just have an episode, how to start a pregnancy center. I think it'd be a hit.
We should do that.
All right.
Maybe we'll
stay tuned.
We'll see you next week, and maybe we'll talk about how to start your own pregnancy center.